Welcome to Agent Tactics. I'm so excited to have Regan Queen on the call. I'm going to introduce to you soon. What's so great about Regan is a year ago, she had 0 listings. And every time I talk to her this year in 2025, I just feel like the amount of listings that she has just keeps going up. Earlier this year, she had 11 listings closed year to date and 11 listings active under contract or just active. Then a couple months later, it was 20 and 10. Then it was 26 and 17. She just has so much going on. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about those numbers. Regan, welcome to Agent Tactics. How's it going?
Thank you for having me, Raj. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're here. I'm excited to share with you guys about listings. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Like you mentioned, I had 0 listings last year, and now I'd have to pull the current count. But I know when I posted a video yesterday, I currently have 8 live, 8 under contract, and then yeah, we have, well, I guess up to 10 coming soon that we're currently working on. So it's a little busy over here.
How many closed year to date? Just like a ballpark?
Um, I can't even, I'd have to pull it because we just had a couple
It's all
this
good.
week. So yeah,
It was like 26 last month. So
I
we're
don't know what it is
halfway
anymore.
across the year. And this is the amount of listings that Regan has. And so she's just seen explosive growth. So Regan's going to uncover her listing playbook, give you all the details of what she has done successfully to get all these listings and how she gets them to contract and close. And she's going to get into that in a second. Let me introduce myself because my name on here is Jeremy Knight, but obviously I'm not Jeremy Knight. My name is Raj Sahu. I'm a realtor here in Austin, Texas. And I love collaborating with other agents like Regan because when we're all learning, we're all getting better. Rising tide raises all ships. And that's what Agent Tactics is all about. So we do this every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central. So feel free to tell your friends, tell other realtors. We love all the collaboration. Regan, what I thought would be great to get into is you had a few bullet points on your listing playbook. Do you want to kind of give a high level of what you're going to cover in this call?
Yeah, so essentially, we obviously have to get the listing. That's a huge piece of just that lead generation. So I'm going to highlight that quick. And then systems are what I live off of. I'm a very type A person, very OCD. And so if I don't have a system with it, it's probably going to crumble. And I think that is my backbone, my skeleton of why I have been able to successfully close as many as we have in such a short amount of time. But also, just keeping myself sane and organized. I'm a mom of two. I have a spouse that's in the military, and so it's just chaos over here. And so without it, we wouldn't be anywhere. And then just getting to that closing, and kind of what that looks like, and we can kind of talk about a final framework if that sounds good.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Drop something in the chat here. If you are really good at listings, you're dominating, put a 5 in the chat. But if you're avoiding listings, put a 1 in the chat. And where are you from 1 to 5? Are you a 3 where you get listings as they come, but it's usually just sphere of influence? Like, where are you on that scale? Dylan throwing in a 1 in the chat. Classic Dylan right there. I'm seeing a lot of threes. I see a 3.187. Is that a play? That's not pi. Is that just a random number, Tom? 3 to 4. Okay, I see a 2. Got it. So a lot of people in the middle of that. Great. Well, Regan, I'm gonna just hand it off to you. I'm so excited to hear about this. If anybody has any questions, drop them in the chat, and then we'll interject and we'll make this as interactive as possible.
So let's dive right in because we do not have a long time. So. Okay, claiming the listing. So I am attracting sellers through referrals, my sphere, Facebook groups, and then just social media as a whole. I do dive into Facebook quite often, and I lean heavily into that because that is where a lot of my referrals are, my sphere is, and through posting different video. I'm not huge on like TikTok. That is something after I went to a conference last year that I'm trying to lean more into. Same thing with Instagram. I've gotten 1 or 2 leads from that. But Facebook is kind of where my baby sits with these listings. Um, as you can see here, a lot of what we're doing again, I just wanted to provide some examples of what that looks like. So I'm getting tagged quite often, and my business partner and I are getting tagged on back end stuff. I've asked to kickstart that whole comment and just having my name out there, the visibility of it, through friends who have seen my growth and then who have worked with me. Have no shame in asking people to tag your name, especially if they have had an experience or they've worked alongside you or whatever it is. The goal is to obtain that as quickly as you possibly can. I'm not hidden on Instagram or Facebook. I, wear the fact that I'm a realtor on my sleeve. That's just part of who I am. The other side to it is I lean really heavy into nationwide partners. So outside of just the community alone, I am connected all over the US, especially being military. I have to be. I want to make sure that my people leaving are in good hands. And part of that is just at a brokerage level too. To take that all away, don't be a secret agent. If you haven't heard that before, please take it and write that down today. If people can't see in your bio or the first thing when they're looking on your social media accounts is that you are a realtor and where you're located, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. You can see it in every one of my bios across the board. We have a similar scheme. I want to make sure that when they're going to my platform, it replicates and looks very similar. A lot of my content, people will ask, it just showcases who I am. We post just listed, just closed, but a lot of it's just about who I am. I'm a mom. You can see my sweet baby girls on the left-hand side. I also have pets and animals. I like to talk about having the military be a part of my life. I'm a military spouse. And so it's really important that my content reflects that as well, because that's primarily who I serve. All that to say, it's a lot of niche. It's who I am, it's what I do, and what I live by. So I highly recommend, if you're not already doing that, not just for a lead turnover to come in today, but just allowing people to connect with you. It's really hard, especially if they haven't met you, to go off of something if there's nothing on your social media. I'm not a social media guru. It's just what worked for me. When you get a lead finally, please do solid appointment prep. You have to do your homework, you have to bring resources to your client, and you have to set expectations. They are trusting you to sell their home. And if you are not doing that, then they're probably not going to trust you and believe that you can get it done. So here's what I do in my pre-listing appointment, or before my listing appointment. I gather 6 pieces of information. That's it. And then I do my homework and I'm able to come with them with a solid plan and my professional recommendation. I'm gathering their home address because that's super important. Why they are selling. I want to know if there's a divorce, so that changes the whole dynamic of communication. If there's been a death, if it's probate and we have to get attorneys and that side involved. Maybe they're moving. Maybe this is a referral opportunity for myself and then one of my business partners in whatever location or state it may be. Or maybe they're looking to buy and upgrade or downsize in the area. Again, very relevant question because we want to retain that client if we're able to, right? We need to know estimated payoff. I need to know about additional liens. The solar panels are a huge thing in my area. They are a pain and a pain in my existence, but we have to know that. And then if there are any major home renovations, so has there been a whole kitchen renovation, bathroom, things like that, and then confirmed bed and bath. It's very simple. There's not a ton that I ask for otherwise. In my listing folder that I prep, once I get all that information, is my brokerage services sheet, my seller resource guide that was created a little while ago, the market analysis, an estimated net sheet, and then an example of my listing agreement. I don't bring anything else to the appointment because I want to give them all of the information up front that I possibly can and then talk about next steps. I don't like to talk about the appraisal or, a potential offer or whatever it may be because we're just not there yet. There's no reason to. And then at that appointment, we're talking about data, the value that I bring to them, setting communication and timeline expectations, and just showing up with confidence. People can tell when you are not confident. If you have to fake it, fake it. Bring somebody with you that, you know, could potentially help you. I still like Dylan, my business partner, went on another one yesterday, and I'm always looking for more feedback on how to change or how to elevate the whole experience, or what we could have left out or what we could have added in, just to make sure that I am staying on track. So the value that we bring to our clients is every client, unless for some reason it's otherwise discussed, we bring in a professional cleaning team. That's pretty much a non-negotiable unless their home is spotless. Photography, videography, we do light staging. And then we also offer a renovation loan and then have a transaction coordinator for support. We have found that the professional cleaning and photography and light staging has been a game changer in just visibility on the market once it is live. Here's why. I took over a listing on this home, and on the top was the photos that were on the market. This home sat for 6 months. There was no traction, no communication that the seller had with their prior agent, and they were so frustrated, so frustrated. And so she asked what we would do, how we could do it, how fast we could move. On the bottom, those are our light staging pictures. When the photographer came in, it is a world of difference. You can actually see the space. You can see the kitchen. It's not cut off, and there is a whole bathroom. It is not dark. It is not dingy. I did nothing else. There is no AI staging. There is no extra furniture in the living space, as you can see. It is huge and so important because that to me looks like two different homes. And we got under contract and sold in less than 2 months. And so I don't say that just because it is the pictures. It wasn't a price issue. We went in at the same price that they left off, and that's what we were able to get them a contract for. So through that entire appointment, it's really important to set the expectations of where they're at in the market. Unfortunately, a lot of people want to believe their home is worth $1 million when it's not. You have to be honest. You have to be transparent. Please do not be lying to say that their home is worth so much more than it is, because you're setting false expectations. Every appointment that we walk into, I want to under promise and then over deliver in the end. I never want to do the opposite. We always will share recommendations on any improvements or repairs that we can suggest. And I'll show you actually an example of what I did in one. We talk about the decluttering and depersonalization process. So why it's so important for them to go through there if it's still lived in. Obviously, a vacant home is very different. And then setting a timeline of just when that pre-list team can come in and when they need to be live by. I like to know when you need to be live by, so then I can kind of work backwards and set that schedule of, okay, the photos have to be in by then. Well, let's move backwards one more step. That means we have to do photos by X date and then cleaning prior. Then I let them know everything will be e-sign. I actually do not sign any listing appointments in person. Some people think I'm crazy to do that. I just don't agree with it. I want to make sure that I have answered all of their questions. I've built a relationship and trust. And at that point, they're like, how soon can I sign? And so we usually try to get it over to them that afternoon. But it's also just a lot of paper, and most people are okay with doing e-sign anyways. So here's a property I just listed. We are actually closing next week. This property also sat. You can see the above photos with a different realtor. They were very frustrated. They are military. They are trying to move. And so again, it was not a pricing issue. I looked through photos and was shocked with the red wall. It was just not as great to look at. So I asked them, I said, hey, do you trust me? Can we paint that wall? And the wife was like, yes, I've been saying that since we moved in. So as you can see on the bottom, it is a totally different room. Now, I normally don't recommend cosmetic things. However, I knew that that would just elevate the entire space and just change the entire look. You can see that we also made recommendations, just again, depersonalizing in the primary bathroom, taking down the pictures, changing out towels with what we have for staging, and then just adding in a couple of plants. On the outside, they didn't actually take off the tarp to show the fireplace. And then the pictures, there was just one of the backyard. What blew my mind is they spent quite a bit of money to put in this turf and this whole like wall to sit in with the fireplace and the pool. And I was just mortified. So the whole point of us going in, you can see the bottom two pictures over here, was to share what that backyard looked like. I was shocked, but that was very important to them. And so that's what we did.
Regan, do you mind
Yeah,
going back to that picture for 1 second?
yeah,
I just
absolutely.
feel like I've seen this slide now multiple times, and I find something new that you did every time. Now on the left side, I just wanted to ask, is it just the lighting? You didn't paint anything on those pictures on the left side, right?
Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing.
What's interesting about that picture that you took at the bottom left is the tile looks, it's so plain Jane above it, but then the tile looks different. And then those plants, I think, play off so well in this picture. It looks like a different bathroom. And all you did was change around like a towel, take down a picture, and add a couple of things that add some great color to it. So I think it's awesome. We did have a question in the
Yeah.
chat from Steph. Do you pay for a lot of this stuff out of pocket?
Mhm.
Photos?
Yep.
Anything else you've covered?
Everything is out of pocket up front. So cleaner, photographer, videographer. I go in and stage. Basically, over the last couple of years, what Dylan and I have done is just accrue staging material. None of this is like a very high-end, expensive thing because we're moving them around a lot. I encourage you to look at Target, Walmart. There's a pop shelf here, like any sale that you can get the greenery on. Glassware you can pretty much find wherever. Go to like a Home Goods or Ross or whatever. Again, just because we're moving it so frequently and we're not working in a luxury home, then, you know, as far as that goes, you don't need a lot, just enough towels for each bathroom and some of the stuff for the kitchen, a couple of towels there. A lot of greenery goes a long way. And you don't want to overdo it. I think that's the biggest thing I learned is some people will go in and they'll stage and it's this whole smorgasbord of stuff and you can't even see the counter. And so what's nice is I think simplicity goes, you know, as much or if not further there. So cool. And then again, this is just another example. This was listed, this had been on the market for a year and a half with two other agents prior to myself. All we did was we decluttered, we depersonalized. They were willing to move out. And on the bottom, you can see just again, totally different bathroom, totally different kitchen. And you're able to just again, envision yourself in that home, which is the whole point on the listing side. Then it goes into admin work, preparing docs, making sure that the seller has signed everything. We will not do anything until the seller signs all of the docs. That is probably one of the biggest and most important things that I will tell you. Set that pre-list time, do the MLS input, and then upload any docs there. Please do not forget to upload docs. So get the seller's disclosure ahead of time, get the survey if they have it. If not, we can order one. And then make sure that if there's any offer instructions or anything else relevant to the home that you need to put in there, please put it in ahead of time. Okay. I'd love to know, drop in the chat, what is one part of all of that for the pre-listing appointment you would like to add or tighten up in your market and what you're doing.
I'll mention some, Regan. What it comes to mind is I've actually done a lot of model home YouTube tours, and a lot of people have done those model home tours. And for some of them, I'm the most viewed video by far, and that's something I could put in my listing presentation as a way of kind of like subtly dunking on everybody else, which is what I think those listing photos really do. So it's just an idea that I had.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I will keep moving forward. So let's get into systems that scale. So on the back end, I use four very basic trackers or some sort of system to keep consistency. So we have a listing tracker. This is actually, I should have updated it, that we use on the team side. So it's myself, buyer's agent, Dylan business partner, and then our events coordinator slash admin side. So we like to list everything out. If there's any social media updates, that's the biggest thing is as soon as we type, it'll come up in purple so we know what needs to be pushed out on socials afterwards. If there's any changes or any notes that we need to put, there's a price reduction or something, we have it here. It's just a Google sheet. There's nothing fancy about it. But again, I didn't want to recreate a whole system that's like way above my, intellectual grade over here. So just a Google sheet. Just use whatever platform that you are comfortable with as you start really getting into the listing side. Now, this is my baby of all things. This is my personal listing tracker sheet. And what I did is I took the entire SOP that I have and I put it into an entire transaction timeline so that I can go in and change through each stage of the transaction. So what you're able to see here is on the left-hand side, and feel free to take pictures of your screen if you'd like. We have current status, so if it's active, pre-listing, under contract, under contracting, or under contract or actual pending, we're through option. We have that here in Texas. And so we get in, I make sure we have all of the docs that we need. We have cleaning status, staging photos, if I did the MLS input, if we're active. There's different things. If I have a seller that like needs updates, wants updates of like price adjustments, how many open houses we've done, we do it here. Most of them, I typically go through and I do a weekly update with them, or if they haven't asked me already for something, that's where I jot that down. And then you can see on the right-hand side, it talks about what happens during that current option period. Again, this is part of Texas. I don't know if everybody is in the same state, so it's maybe a little bit different. We talk about repair negotiations, things like that. This takes you through, again, under contract, so fully pending and through closing. So again, tracking if appraisal has been ordered, what that outcome was, if buyer loan is officially approved, and if we've received clear to close. Again, I'm a very type A person. This isn't going to work for everybody, but when you are handling so many listings at once, you have to know what's going on. I lean into the transaction coordinator that I have because she has a similar system where she's jotting down timelines and making sure things are in. I'll update this usually after I have already chatted with her. We have a weekly meeting every Wednesday. So again, it's kind of just a double check of everything, but I want to make sure that we are all set with that.
And do you put your listings like where on areas that overlap? Do you put them both in CTX and Austin MLS?
Yes, we do have access to both the CTX. Yes, so we will use two.
Okay, and just I'm sure you know this, but CTX, if you enter that first, you get way better positioning than you do if you put in the Austin MLS.
Yes. Yep. So another thing that I use in consistency, which is really important, is the reverse prospecting side. So most of you know on the back end system, we're able to pull whoever has saved in a portal, as long as they opt in for their client, if it's been saved, to pull that email for the agent and reach out. This has been pretty effective for me. There have been a couple of people that said, thank you for sending this. I actually didn't realize that this fell into their criteria. Or for an open house, an invite, we've pushed more traction that way. If there's a price adjustment and it falls back into the lap of somebody who may just have forgotten, they have seen it, and now it's more comfortable for them. I went through ChatGPT to create the emails. So what I did is I went in and I basically said, I want to create a system around reverse prospecting to add this to my system. The reason I do this is one, it's more exposure for my clients. It gets me in the inbox of other agents, but two, it also just provides like I'm more proof and facts that we're actually working, right? And so I think sometimes agents forget that once you hit the active button, they just walk away and hope that a buyer comes. No, we're being very proactive in advertising and marketing this home to try to find a buyer, especially being in a buyer's market and how slow it's been this year. Feel free to take a picture if this is something that you guys want to dive into in your own. But yeah, we're just highlighting the home and then making sure that we have a system around it. The first initial outreach goes out about 5 to 7 days after we have this live. The reason for is not everybody is set up on like a daily reoccurring email that they get properties. I want to make sure that we're at least through that first 5 to 7 days of active status in hopes that I got all of the emails out that I could. The second follow-up will go out another 7 days after. So this gets us about the first 3 weeks of the property. Once we hit that point, then I do kind of reevaluate. I pull more comps to see what has changed in that current area, that subdivision. And then that's kind of where we sit down to say, if there's no showings, if there's no offer on the table, what are our next steps after we've maximized everything we could on the social media side, the marketing side, and then reverse prospecting. So like I mentioned, I went through and did that listing tracker off of my entire SOP. So if you want to take your phones out, I am going to share with you guys today the entire SOP that I have for my listing. I'm not going to dive into this too deep. If we have time for some questions, I'm kind of pushing through so I can answer what I can. This is my entire brains of from when the lead comes in to post-closing follow-up, which we are changing a little bit. We have a whole table of content so you can kind of see how we broke down everything there. Basically, again, this is walking through when I put them in. So we do utilize a CRM called Lofty. Some of you may have like Follow-Up Boss or Command if you're with KW. Again, it's just another system that we're able to use. This takes you through that listing appointment and pre-list prep that I talked about. So the initial docs that are sent in my zip forms. And then going through and on the left-hand side, once everything is sent to my client, I have a preset template that I created, again, ChatGPT. I threw in everything that I wanted and had it explain to the client what it is. So you can see it's just a reminder of what emails are coming in because there's 3 that actually get sent out. This one, the one that they're doing for the e-doc signing for all of their listing docs, and then their seller's disclosure I do send from Seller Shield. So again, it's just reminding them to do all of their stuff. The T47 is kind of irrelevant because we switched that. That's fine. We do list out the pre-list timeline. So for the clean of the stager, when it's relevant for them, live date, and then reminders. I'm always very clear that they still need to pay their mortgage, their utilities, HOA transfer fees will come up, and then any repairs are negotiated just to cover my butt to say, we did send an email with that. Kind of goes into putting all of the stuff on, again, going into the MLS intake, all of the back-end stuff that we're setting up then. Then it gets into the active listing side, which is changing status on MLS. If we did like a coming soon, ABOR doesn't allow you to do that in our area. Going through making sure that we're setting them up on the showing time app so they're able to have access to that. Goes into the marketing process. So all of the things that we're doing outside of just having it put on Zillow. And then what happens when an offer comes in. Again, I have an email template that I have in my SOP where it does an overview and it breaks down everything for the client. Again, I just copy and paste, put in the relevant information to this specific contract. And then any recommendations that we may have, hop on a call with them later. Once we're executed, we bring in a transaction coordinator to help facilitate the whole transaction. It goes through the process of, making sure title has opened everything, earnest and option money is in for our area. And then kind of slows down after that. Really, it just comes down to if there are any repairs that are negotiated or brought up in an appraisal or lender required. And then kind of taking it home. Sellers at that point are pretty hands-off. There's not much that they have to do except showing up for signing. Talks about, closing and then post-closing follow-up then, which we're tweaking just a little bit more to elevate the whole experience. So I mentioned in that we do have a CRM. We do just a lot of client data input there. We do some mass emailing. So for different events, I'm able to filter through and utilize that. And that's where we have our website out of. I do utilize the transactions tab. I love this feature of Lofty because, again, I know I have my other sheets, but it's just nice for it to tally everything that's going up. I like to also see numbers. It's kind of a good motivator. If we're shy, if, things are moving, and just good stuff there. Again, it's nice because I can put the client's information in here. I can add family members. We do that. We actually, tomorrow night, we have our Summer Fun client event where we rent out an entire water park with a couple other realtor friends, and all of our clients get to come in if they choose, and they get to swim, hang out, get pizza, snow cones. And so it's a great way to have them in the CRM so we can mass email and make sure we're texting and getting them all of the good information that way. And on the right-hand side, this is actually where we have it fed in from the IDX feed and are able to get our personalized links from our website for all of those listings. I utilize these a lot. One, just because if we want to share it with the client, just to say, hey, instead of looking at it on Zillow, here's what you see from our website and what we're pushing out. Also, it helps with driving traffic back to you in case a buyer sees it and they want to look through with whatever else you have going on. But we do have QR code signs. We have a whole system behind that. So on the right-hand side, you can actually see for every listing that we have, there are 2 QR codes on their listing sign. One is to scan for property info. The other is direct to our website. I do this because some people are very nosy and neighbors may not want to knock on the door, but they want to see what's going on with the house. So they can scan that. And what I did was I take the URL from the landing page for that listing and I drop it into our QR code system, and I switch these out for each listing. You can track how many scans you've had for that sign. You can reset it if you want to, and just change out the URL. So it's not that you have to get a listing sign for every single one. There's a very small number on the bottom to keep us organized to say what listing sign is at which house. Again, it's just another marketing tool. We can change out the URL to whatever page that we want it to go to. And when they are not on market, it's just coming soon, excuse me. And it'll just send them right to our main page until it's ready. And then again, I mentioned ChatGPT a couple of times. Some people aren't ready to dive into it. I lean heavily into it just to make sure that I have everything I need. So again, this is a huge part of my pre-listing timeline. If there's any prompts that I need for open houses, I actually also use it to help me go through the whole offer phase. So this is a little insight to my brain. You're able to organize it into folders. So I do a lot with the marketing side. My personal life, it's kind of like a life therapist that I have at hand. And then just, buyer listing related stuff. We have my different SOPs that I've thrown in ideas and I just basically had to add it organized. Lean into it. It is a tool. It's not supposed to take over everything in your business. But I love it because it just allows me to have a much cleaner and more put together thought. Even sometimes for text, I will throw it in and be like, here's what I want to say, but can you make it all, summarized and grammatically correct? So I talked about the different ways that I utilize it. So here are a couple of examples that I used. So for captions, I think we've seen that before. The biggest thing is whenever you put a prompt in, make sure it's relevant and all the information is correct. Copy and paste it, change out what you don't like. I'm always asking, can you write a just close caption for this, but tell more of a story? For listing launch, can you create a caption for this teaser reel? I'll drop in different photos or different screenshots of items to help the whole process and have that, be much more relevant to the specific property I'm talking about. I work primarily in a military community, so I'm always talking about how can we make a twist for my niche content to be more military relevant. So how can we create this caption about the PCS prep, which means just permanent change of station when they move. I want it to be helpful. I want to highlight, this move as this military chapter closes. How can we tweak it from just a just close to making it a story about a military family? And then again, like I mentioned, I used it for my reverse prospecting examples. So the initial prompt of, hey, I'm starting to do reverse prospecting for my active listings. I'm able to pull a whole list of realtors that have liked and saved this listing and get the information to set up a template to utilize for a reverse prospect email. Can you help me? It spit out whatever it did. And then I said, Can we change the tone? Here's my specific target audience, the purpose that I want of this email. Here's the call to action that I want to happen. And then let's talk about the frequency of it. The more specific that you get with ChatGPT, the more helpful it is. Do the same thing with the tone in your captions. I often do a little bit more emotional or straightforward if it's regarding like factual stuff with the military. It's really helpful to give it that information because I want this to be somewhat professional if I'm talking to other realtors, but I want it conversational, something that is a little bit personable and fits who I am as a person. So, are there any things that you can implement or use out of that whole system side, which is like the beast, the skeleton of it all? I know
That was definitely a beast, Reganne. Oh my goodness. Drop a 1 in the chat if you're getting value from this, because that was amazing. I've never seen somebody, give a system and then also give ChatGPT prompts of how you can incorporate this in your business. I'm seeing so many ones in the chat. This is such good stuff. Reganne, I'm just going to get out of the way. Please keep going. This is amazing.
Okay. Were there any questions that I could have answered? I'm not following the chat. I'll be very honest. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything if something had come through.
I didn't see any questions. I've seen some comments. This is great. Love this. A lot of positive feedback.
Cool. Okay. We'll rush to the end. So then if we need to open it up, we totally can.
Sure.
So let's close like a queen. As you see, it is my real last name, or a king, whoever you are. We have to handle offers with confidence. So owning the entire process with your clients, but also the other realtor on the side. Please don't be rude. Please don't be nasty. I promise you it does not make the entire process easier. It actually can ruin that relationship with the other agent, your client. It just isn't fun. Utilize tools like spreadsheets to break down the templates, like I showed you earlier of the emails, to make it more efficient and easier. I'm assuming that most of my clients have probably never sold. And even if they had, it probably was years ago and things have changed. And just highlight that seller education without over explaining. They really just need to know the information that's crucial and important. And you're covering your duty with your license that you have. So again, here is the offer emails that I do. I want to break it down of what is important. We need to know price, what's going on with the different earnest and option money we have, if there's concessions, if they're negotiating a buyer agent comp, if there's other things like they want the home professionally cleaned, and then making recommendations. I always say at the end of the email, let's hop on a call to go over it all. They're not going to look through the documents and be like, yep, I know exactly what this is and what that makes my net be. No, it's just not realistic. You are the professional. You have to explain in a very simplistic seller 101 style tone of voice. If you have multiple offers, I actually stole this sheet from a different class that I took, but have something prepared on the back end if you get a multi-offer situation. This has actually happened to me 3 times this year in the slow market it has been. But it is very hard for people to just go through one offer, yet alone multiple, and it gets to be very confusing. If you can simplify the process for your seller, please do. This just takes all of the relevant information and the different costs that are associated with it and the different requests of those buyers, and then just kind of spits out what that overall net offer estimate will look like. There is a disclaimer at the bottom that I always say it doesn't include potentially all costs. This is just an example, a generalization, an estimate. I love this because it gives opportunity to have conversation and really dive deep into it. I still send all separate emails. They get this email for each offer, but they'll get a 5th email that compares everything for them. It's very helpful and very easy for them to read compared to asking them to go through all the docs that were sent for the offer. The other thing that happens is curveballs and conflicts. This has happened to me quite often this year. I mean, we've done 8 terminations on different listings. A couple of them was with the same seller. Timelines get shifted. People are frustrated. Your calm is their confidence. If you take a step back, take a break, I'll go to Dylan and sob for a couple of minutes and then come back to figure out a plan. You have to learn how to step back in order to give the best representation, but also resolution of whatever is going on. I like this. I'm practicing this. I practice this often because it has come up so much in our transactions, especially when we're dealing with a high volume and amount of listings. There's going to be challenges. Pause and reframe, pivot and communicate, and relaunch with intention. If you have to change anything, whether it's a renegotiation or there was a termination, you have to go back on market, just revamp some stuff. That's happened a lot. The biggest thing that I will say is if at all you never know, or you're not sure what to do, or you need a break, just use the excuse. Let me make a few calls. I'll circle back in 30 minutes or 2 hours. Setting that expectation for them, because then they don't feel like you're leaving them hanging, or it gives you time to figure out whatever you need to do. And then communicate to the seller that you have it handled. Here's what's happening. Here's what we're doing. Here's what to expect. The more clear of a picture that you can give them, even if there is an unknown, they're like, okay, cool. The person, I can trust them. I can step back and let them handle what they do. And it really just, it does help a lot. And then objection handling. This happens all the time with realtors, with third-party people, inspectors, clients, you name it. Practice scripts with other people. I actually, just before this call, I hopped on a phone call to ask about if, I went through a situation that had happened with a buyer, just asked for feedback, good to go. Practice with people in your office. Practice with a friend that doesn't know anything about real estate. I love using that one because then you get a very unbiased person and you can ask them, did I explain this thoroughly to where you understand what I'm talking about? It allows you to just continue practicing what you are doing and trying to achieve. Bi-weekly check-ins. If you are not doing check-ins with your clients, I would say start practicing that and putting that into your consistent plan of buyers or sellers. They just want to know. Even if there is no update, they just want to know. And I have no problem saying that to the clients that we work with. Hey, there's just been no movement. Here's what we're doing. They can sleep at night, at least knowing what is going on. People just don't want nothing. Crickets. That makes them very, very uncomfortable. So I'll leave you with this. You need to think like a closer. If you want to attract sellers, if you want to get through that transaction and just, get to that closing table, have confidence, learn how to leverage, own that entire process from start to finish. You have to have structure. You need to educate those around you and reignite as needed, whether it's your motivation to do listings, whether it's the actual listing itself. You just need to do that for the entire process to come to fruition. So before we take any questions, please make sure that if there was anything in this that you're writing down that you can implement today. One of the biggest things I see is when people hop on Zoom, they take it all in and then they go to their appointment and they forget everything. So I encourage you to, at the top of your paper or in your phone right now, write down one thing that you can go implement this afternoon or tomorrow, because I would hate for you to have wasted an hour of your time today and just not do anything. Yeah. I am willing to give away my listing tracker and ChatGPT prompts. If, again, you should be able to scan on the screen. It'll just have you drop your email in and send you a direct email with those docs and that overall tracker, so you can get started and kind of work on your systems as well.
Such good stuff. There's so much value that's here on the listing side, but I also think the systems can be applied for anything, right? You can do this for buyers, just instead of taking out marketing the property, try to figure out like a system for buyers of how you can get them through the process. And I think when you show people your system, this is where the confidence comes from, Reganne, right? Because you have confidence in yourself, but then the sellers or the buyers that you're talking to, they feel the confidence. They feel like they're working with somebody who's going to take them through this process of selling or buying the biggest purchase of their life, right? And I think that that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. I don't ever want a seller to question what we're doing. And I think if there's ever that hesitation, there's always receipts, like from social media posts, analytics, what we're doing. I can send them an example of the email that we sent out. The more that you have, the more that they can actually see the whole value and the hard work that you are putting in for them. And if you aren't doing all of those things, find one tool. Maybe it is just adding a reverse prospect email, or maybe it is having just a system together to be able to help them and just say, hey, like I actually have a system that allows me to be consistent in all of the different avenues that we're doing in this transaction, from the pre-list to when we're active. And it is really helpful for you and the client too. So
Absolutely. So drop your questions in the chat or just unmute, interject in this conversation. While we're waiting for anybody to drop a question or unmute, raise your hand. I had a question on the biweekly check-ins, Reganne. Assuming that you're like, 30, 45 days on market, you've already done social media, maybe you've done one or two open houses. What are you doing in that call to set them at ease? And what are you saying that you're going to continue to do to market their listing?
that's a really great question. So the first thing is always doing my homework before the call. So a market analysis of, again, that area. So the subdivision, or, the most comparable properties that I can to that home, to let them know if anything else has come on market, did go under contract, or recently closed. The recently closed is really, really helpful, because then we can have the conversation, well, this similar property had closed at X amount, and here's what they offered for, potential closing costs, or maybe they didn't at all. It allows you to come with something. Our rule of thumb in again, our market is, if we're not seeing any traction, so no foot traffic at open houses, through any offers or showings within that 2 to 3 week mark, that's where we have that first conversation of, it may be worth looking into a subtle price adjustment. We have those conversations, and again, before that call, we're already computing what those numbers look like, what the estimate looks like, so then we can ensure that they know where they're at with the numbers. I think that's really important. Is you can change sales price, you can change concessions, you can, negotiate a couple of different things, but their overall net is what's important to them. And if you're not talking about that or setting them up for understanding, I think that's where you're going to have some miscommunication or just a misunderstanding on what those expectations are. So do the homework before that call always, and come to that with, here's where the property is sitting. Here's what we can do. Now the ball is in your court. I've provided all facts that I possibly can about this. What do you want to do? What are you comfortable with doing? Give them an ABC type of idea, and kind of picking and choosing. Make them feel like they came up with the idea of, oh, yeah, like let's just reduce it to XYZ, or, what are your thoughts? And you can give them all the recommendations, but ultimately it has to be their choice.
That makes a lot of sense. I see a lot of people shaking their heads as well. I think that's always a tough conversation, especially in this market, especially if you're around a lot of new build neighborhoods here in Austin. It's tough to sell, but it's difficult conversations, and that's what they're hiring the listing agent for. So I totally get that. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody drop in the chat or unmute? Otherwise, I had another question if I don't see anybody. I'll start here, Reganne, with your listing, kind of even before getting the listing. I get a lot of clients that reach out to me, and they're just kind of entertaining the idea of potentially selling. Maybe their employer's bringing them back to the West Coast, and they're gonna negotiate that and try to figure that out. And they're usually just looking for like a ballpark price. So they're like, what would you think our house would go for? Do you give them a ballpark, just send them some comps, or do you do the whole listing presentation, go in person? How do you approach somebody like that?
I always try to get them on a phone call or go in person. because it's still building a relationship, and that's what I want to do. Whether they're selling now or later, you still need to get in front of the client. Again, to also just obtain that and set next steps. So maybe they're not sure, but that allows you to know, like, okay, well, I'm going to follow up in 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever it may be, and take that back and make sure you're setting it up in your CRM to, ping it so in 2 weeks you follow up, or in your calendar, whatever it is. I still will pull together the example because the net sheet still is relevant. The market analysis is still there. I just say, hey, depending on your timeline, the market may shift. Stuff in your neighborhood is not going to look like it was or is now. And that's okay. Once you get to that point and you are ready to list with us, we just, we'll go on there. I always assume that I just have the listing. If you're not walking in like that, then, they could go elsewhere. But I think the most important thing for you is still to have that appointment, and just, again, you have to show value. You have to show what you're bringing to the table, and then set up some sort of timeline, whether it's follow up to just see if they're selling, or, running new comps again for them. It doesn't take that long to run comms, and set up a quick little net sheet and stuff for them. So I'm always happy to do that, because it's hard for somebody to make an educated decision without knowing, like, where something's at. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and then your listing strategy, are you focused on like certain neighborhoods, or do you just go everywhere in your market? How do you approach that? And or what would you recommend for other realtors?
yeah, so I don't necessarily focus on a specific neighborhood. We kind of, I call it the greater Fort Hood area. So there's a couple of cities that I will go, and then down to like Austin is where I see most of the military community. I do find myself ending up being in much more of a military niche. And so I would say, if there is any strategy, it's to those who are relocating. That's what most of, I think, my content and marketing will always be. But I don't limit it to that, because some people are coming to Austin, but they want to move, or they're moving north of that. And so we can help them, or they're moving away to a different job elsewhere that's not necessarily military. So I would say relocating in this central Texas area is kind of
Yeah.
where
With
I'm.
the theme being around military, right? So
Yeah,
that is
yep,
like your target
absolutely.
niche, and that just tends to be different
Yep.
locations, which is fine. That makes sense. Okay. In terms of like outside of your SOI, where are you getting a lot of listings? Is it people like scanning the QR code, they see your signs everywhere, and then they just reach out to you? Like, what's working from a marketing standpoint to get
Yeah.
more listings?
So the listing that I showed of like all the stuff in the bathroom, I actually had a listing on the same street, and they called me because they were so shocked at how fast I sold that home. And so they were like, ours has been sitting for over a year now, so can you help us? And so, that had happened. Often it's because my name has come up in a search bar because of the Facebook groups, or word of mouth, whether that be another agent that we've worked with or have shared referrals in the past, or just, again, close friends and family who will push out my stuff too. So it's a good mixture. Some have come from videos. I'm working with one right now that they follow all of that stuff. Others have just been because it's been on a platform. So it's been a mixture.
That's
I saw
good.
Steph raised her hand.
Go ahead, Steph. Sorry if I missed you.
No, no worries. I just raised my hand. Couple questions. So I'm in Austin, Texas, but I focus mainly like South Austin down into like New Braunfels area. And so we're pretty much in the same type of market as far as like a very heavy buyer's market. As far as like pricing in this market and having that conversation initially, like even if it's 10 or $20,000, like more than what you're trying to tell them as far as like data and comps, like how do you have those conversations? And I know you said like you wait 2 or 3 weeks to adjust. Do you just have that harsh conversation like we'll price here, but understand that we need to make changes if we don't see A, B, and C? That's my first question. And then do you do anything else besides price adjustments? Do you try to advertise like 2-1 buy downs or any other kind of like buyer incentives? Or do you just talk about like we need a price adjust?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's always the expectation that is set that if something isn't moving, regardless of where we price, they know that I will come back within a couple of weeks to just have a conversation. If, and I'm guessing, do you mean if they say we want to price at 400, but your recommendation was like 375 and they want to try to maximize that size? Okay. So what I'll do is I will always make sure they understand I am trying to do my comparables as close as I can to an appraiser. So that's $1 per square foot. Regardless if your next door neighbor sold for $75,000 more, if it is not comparable, I am not pulling that property. So always make it very clear just in that analytics side. Now, if they have some time and they understand that we can go a little bit higher, but keeping it within what, that highest comp to avoid, a tidewater situation, leave it in their court and just say, I just want to make sure you understand my recommendation is 375, but I see that, the higher end could be up to. So if you feel comfortable starting there, but understanding that we may need to pivot and reevaluate later, cool. Again, put that in another email in that follow-up, because then you have a footprint of all of the things that you have recommended and said, so they can't come back to you and say, well, you never told us XYZ. That is like my biggest pet peeve, and I will do anything and everything I can to avoid that. So yes, be very transparent. That's one thing that I don't like to sugarcoat, but I'll do it in the kindest way possible is, hey, you're hiring me to sell your property. I am giving you all of the things that I possibly can for you to make an educated decision, and kind of pin it back on them. If we list higher, we may not see traction. So if we don't see traction, here's how we're setting you up to talk about that price adjustment later. That's the best thing you can do. Some sellers, again, they're going to give some pushback. Just, reframe the whole conversation and just say, okay, here's the highest that you could possibly go, so you avoid any tidewater situation, because you're just going to have to lower it later. And just kind of feel it out from there. Most sellers, once you lay that all out and it's very clear, you're not going to have too much pushback. I haven't seen. So
that's great. Good question. We have a couple minutes left, and we got a good question in the chat, but a loaded question. And that
okay.
is, what do you do for Facebook groups, and how do you generate business from it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of Facebook groups Dylan and I run. So we actually don't market our properties themselves. We always lead with value. I think regardless of wherever you are at on Facebook, lead with value. We're part of different referral groups that, a million other agents are on. But the biggest thing is, if they're looking for an agent, don't just say, I'm here. Say, hey, I'm so-and-so in this specific area. Here's what I do for my clients. Post a video of it. Sometimes I've done that where I want them to see, like, I'm actually a person. I'm not a bot. I'm here in, flesh, and this is what we can provide. I've actually gotten so many sellers from that way, because they were like, you actually answered my question, or you went above and beyond of what I was even looking for. Let's just get connected. They don't want to have to sit through a million people of like, yep, I'm an agent. Yep, I'm an agent. Yes, I'm listing. And then, again, I have kids, I have pets. If I can get in different groups and just build that relationship, most of them will either follow me or add me on Facebook. And so we do a lot that way as well. So just interacting, building relationships, showing yourself, because people want to know, again, who you are, and they can connect with you on a much more personal level rather than not. So
that's so good. Nick, I wanted to mention a couple things on that. First off, I've been around Reganne and Dylan as much as I can over the last couple years, and I can tell you one thing: they just focus on value so much. They have this huge moving to guide that they've built up that's like 50 pages long, but it never started with 50 pages. It started as one page. People keep asking them about daycares, what's the best daycare? So they created a one-page document that talked about the best daycares. And then they kept doing that for restaurants and parks and everything that you can think of. All of a sudden, over time, they built up this great guide, and they used it as a great lead magnet in their Facebook group. And their Facebook group's predominantly about chatting about what you need to know moving to a certain area. It's all value driven, and I'm not surprised that they built a massive business off of it. Second thing I want to mention is we overthink things all the time. I'm guilty of this all the time. When Reganne and Dylan has mentioned that this live too, is when they do a loan to the seller to make certain repairs and then they get paid at closing. One of the questions we got live in Austin was, how do you do that? Like, do you working with a company? And I remember Dylan just saying, Dylan Jankovic LLC. I thought it was the funniest answer because they don't overthink these things. They just see value to sellers, value to buyers, and they provide it. And I think that's how they keep building these amazing systems over time. So I wanted to leave it up to you, Reganne, because we're out of time here. Give some closing thoughts. What do you think people should take away from this, and what should they do next?
I love that you said don't overthink it, because again, some people just get stuck in that space. Don't overthink your process. My folder has 5 actual documents in it that I take to the appointment. And I'm not doing anything special on Facebook or in my process. You know, it's just the same habitual thing over and over again. And I'm not changing it too much. You know, it's the same conversation in that pre-list. It's the same way we're marketing. It's the same way that we're closing that out. And consistency for me has gone so much further than anything else. There's not often times where I'm doing a big shift. I think having a new TikTok has been the biggest shift I've done in a long time. It's always adding just a little bit more. I love when people use the Lego analogy where you just, again, it's just another building block to create that full masterpiece, right? Because you have to be strategic about it. Otherwise it crumbles. And so think of it that way. You have to show up with confidence in order to close with whoever you are working with, whether that be the client, the other agent on the other side, whether it's, you know, title, the lender, whoever it is, buyer or seller side. Don't go and reinvent everything. Just be consistent, have that confidence, and you'll get there.
That's so good. That's so good, Reganne. Thanks for jumping on. Reganne, where can people find you if they have more questions for you?
On Instagram and Facebook. Don't follow the TikTok yet because that's still not ready.
It's still early.
Instagram and Facebook. It's just my name. So, yeah.
Reganne Queen, Reganne with 2 N's, very easy. Reganne, thank you so much for providing great value to everyone here. I feel like I'm always picking off something new when I listen to you talk. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right.
See you guys all soon.